I can be a shareholder of a company and not have contributed one CD to the company.
Can you take us through the types of businesses to consider in Ghana? What are the types of businesses? And then maybe moving forward, we can consider what it means to register this kind of business and what is the law saying about these type of businesses?
There are three main types of businesses in Ghana.
Okay.
We have the sole proprietorship, the partnership model, and limited liability companies. Generally, a lot of people in Ghana freestyle their businesses. There are so many people that have run businesses for generations without any kind of corporate structure, without any incorporation. There are also a lot of startups, very promising startups that are coming into the Ghanaian economic ecosystem that have a lot of potential, but also don't have the ability or capacity to have a proper setup.
See, the way Dick hit me up and said, "Oh, Bill, I want to start this business, this company. Let's start a podcast." What are the actionable steps we have to take when we decide to go ahead and start the business?
The first thing you need to do is
Acquire World. It's us again, another Peswa Podcast. And as tradition is beginning to demand, I'm going to share with you a piece of literature that I hope will keep you going. I'm going to share with you Invictus by William Henley, a personal favorite of mine. So it goes like, out of the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In a fell clutch of circumstance, I have no wings nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears, looms by the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gates, hard charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fates. I am the captain of my soul. So in our bid to spur you on to take the entrepreneurship journey, we have decided to bring in toolkit episodes. Episodes that speak more directly to the do's and don'ts and the technicalities of being a business person, particularly in Ghana. And today's episode is one of those episodes. Today we're going to have a conversation with a legal practitioner who's going to give us perspective on what it means to start a business in Ghana. And she's Priscilla Wepia Ametame. She's a private legal practitioner and the co-founder for Asono Consultancy, a consultancy that provides 360 service for founders and business people. So we're going to touch on that and hopefully have a lovely conversation. Hey, Priscilla, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for inviting me.
It's good to have you here. So I know you're the co-founder for Asono, consultancy. What are you guys about?
So Asono is a 360 business consultancy service, which provides businesses in Ghana and foreign businesses seeking to do business in Ghana with services that include compliance and regulatory guidance, tax and accounting, funding and business development, branding and marketing, and software and IT support.
Okay.
So what we essentially do is we provide you with a one-stop shop where you can access all these services needed for the day-to-day running and administration of a business, all at the same place.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. I gather that you have you do a ton of work in the Ghanaian startup ecosystem, and what's the interest there? What nudged you to take interest in helping businesses and startups and stuff like that?
I would say that initially I have a lot of respect generally for people who venture into business. I've never thought of it as something that I can do myself. I think it takes a lot of grit to do business.
But you can co-founding a consultancy.
Yeah, I've slowly found myself becoming very fascinated with how businesses run, how businesses operate, and how businesses grow. Fortunately for me, my legal career has also given me the opportunity to work with different businesses of different sizes, both foreign and local, large, small businesses, multinational companies as well. And I think that through that journey, I've gained a passion for helping businesses do business better and in a more efficient way.
Oh, okay, interesting. So, did you always know you're going to be a lawyer, who's going to focus on businesses and stuff like that? Has it always been your thing, or?
I never actually planned to become a lawyer.
Okay.
It's just something that happened to me. But I would say that after my first year of LLB at K University,
Okay.
I asked myself, what am I doing here? But I'm happy I pressed on, and
Okay.
I do enjoy my job. I enjoy being a lawyer. I don't see anything else I'd rather be doing.
Okay, that's interesting. So I think today we want to, especially given the mandate of our podcast, we essentially want to spare people want to take the entrepreneurship journey. And one thing we've gathered over the period is that we speak to a lot of founders and we realize they are out of the loop, so to speak, on what the legal perspective is when it comes to starting the business, right? With their incorporation, the type of business they're trying to run, shareholding, So can you take us through the types of businesses to consider in Ghana? What are the types of businesses? And then maybe moving forward, we can consider what it means to register this kind of business and what is the law saying about these type of businesses, right? So
Okay.
yes.
I'd say that generally a lot of people in Ghana freestyle their businesses. There are so many people that have run businesses for generations without any kind of corporate structure, without any incorporation. There are also a lot of startups, very promising startups that are coming into the Ghanaian economic ecosystem that have a lot of potential, but also don't have the ability or capacity to have a proper setup to make them ready for the market or ready for investors. I would say that there are three main types of businesses in Ghana.
Okay.
We have the sole proprietorship, the partnership model, and limited liability companies. Okay. Those are the three main types of businesses I would say exist in Ghana. Of course, there are others. We have limited by guarantee companies that are, more of charitable companies. We have unlimited companies and the like. But the three main ones that would typically, deal with in the Ghanaian context are the sole proprietorship, partnership, and limited liability companies.
Okay, so I have an idea. I want to say procure shoes and sell them. What should I consider? What are the things I should think about to know what kind of business this is going to be legally, right? And then how do I move on from there? So let's start with the sole proprietorship. What are the things to consider to say, okay, well, I'm running the sole proprietorship, and then what happens from there?
Okay, so I'd say that a sole proprietorship is essentially a one-man business. And so when you go into a lot of these markets and commercial centers, the kind of business model that you see there will typically be a sole proprietorship. So if you see so-and-so ventures or so-and-so enterprise, that is typically a marker of a sole proprietorship business. For sole proprietorship, if you are setting up the sole proprietorship business under your name, you do not need to necessarily register the business name. However, if you're using a name that is not your given name, then you may have to register as a business the business name in order to do business. I'll say that the advantage of a sole proprietorship business is decision making is relatively easy. Okay. It's run by one person, and so you don't need to consult anyone if you want to do something. Some disadvantages that this business model may have is that the business usually ends when the owner of the business dies or travels or is no longer available to conduct business, because it revolves around one person, and when that person is unavailable, everything comes to a grinding halt. Okay. Another thing is that liability is not limited, and so as a business owner, you may be personally liable for any debts or any liabilities that your business incurs, and so there's no separate legal entity there for sole proprietorship. The owner and the business are one and the same. So these are some of the disadvantages of a sole proprietorship business.
Oh, okay, that's exciting. And then, so the next thing you say is the partnerships, right?
Yes. So for partnerships, we have a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 20 people that make up a partnership. Okay. So partnerships usually occur when, for example, Bill and his friend Noah decide that they want to start some type of business. They may choose to either have a partnership agreement or not, but they register as a partnership and they do business together. In this kind of model, the partners are jointly and severally liable for, whatever liabilities the company carries. I would say an advantage of partnership is that
what does that mean? They're jointly and
Severally
liable. What does that mean?
So if the business gets into any debts, whoever the partners are would be liable for that debt.
With their personal assets.
Exactly.
And so in this case, is the business a separate entity from the partners, or they are one and the same?
It's a separate entity, but liability is not limited.
Okay.
So the partnership exists as a partnership, subject to, of course, the registration of the partnership, but the liability of the partners are not unlimited.
Okay, so you were talking about the upsides, advantages of a partnership.
So I'd say an advantage of a partnership is that the business may survive the death of one or two partners. Like I said, you can have up to 20 partners making up a partnership. And so if one or two of them pass away, of course, the business can still continue with the other partners. I'll say a disadvantage that exists is that decision-making may be more difficult because more people are involved in the decision-making process, as opposed to sole proprietorship where one person is making the decision. And so whatever the person says goes. In a partnership structure, you have people coming together, and so decision making may be more difficult as compared to a sole proprietorship. I'd also say that you are pulling together resources, and so you may have more resources at your disposal if you decide to go the partnership route as opposed to if you're a sole proprietor.
Okay. I see. And then the limited liability business.
Okay, so the limited liability business is what a lot of large scale businesses, or nowadays even SMEs, are running, which is an incorporated company. Okay. So for this, it's heavily regulated by the Companies Act in Ghana. So you need to register it. We have different forms of limited liability companies. We have the public limited liability companies and the private ones. When you talk about the private ones, that is where you typically have a few friends coming together, setting up a company, and then appointing directors for the company, each having their own, shareholding structure, and then they do business together. For that structure, the people who make up the company and the company are separate. And so the company is treated as a legal person. The company has a legal personality, which allows the company to sue and be sued. Okay. And so you can sue a limited liability company separate from the people that make up the company.
Does this same thing apply to the partnership, for example? Or can you sue a business as a partnership separately from the partners, or they're one and the same?
So you can sue the partnership as a model, but then ultimately liability will be borne by the partners.
Okay.
Whereas in a limited liability company, so if I'm a shareholder in a company called Peswa Limited, and you sue Peswa Limited, it has nothing to do with me. Okay. You can't drag me to court because you have an issue with Peswa Limited, because Peswa Limited has a separate personality. It can sue and be sued in its own name.
Okay.
Also, a key feature of limited liability companies are that they must have at least two directors. Okay. And so you can't have just one person being a director of a limited liability company. There must be at least two, and one of them must be ordinarily resident in Ghana. So you can't have two directors that live, one in Australia, one in the US, and it doesn't work like that. One of them has to be ordinarily resident here. Also, for limited liability companies, your liability is limited to the shares that you hold. So if we decide to set up a limited liability company, 5 people decide to set up a limited liability company, and they each have 20% shares for 2,000 cedis each. Your liability is limited to that 2,000 Ghana cedis. And so once you fully paid up for your shares, you have no further liabilities. And whatever, issues the company may have, I don't want to say it does not concern you, but really it doesn't affect you as a person. It doesn't affect your personal assets. And so that's the structure that lawyers will typically advise people to set up, because it allows you to separate your personal affairs from your business affairs. It also gives you some form of legitimacy because you have directors, you have a board that's running the company who may consist of the shareholders or may not consist of the shareholders. It's easy for people to buy in because you can just, give them shares in exchange for capital contribution or capital commitment. Okay. And even if one or two of the shareholders pass away, the company still exists and the company can still continue.
Interesting. So touched on the share element in like a limited liability company, right? What does it mean? What does a share mean? So for example, I have a company with my friend called Kojo, right? Kojo and I have come together to set up a limited liability company, and you're saying that our liability is limited by shares. What does it mean? How do we even come up with, okay, this person has this amount of shares in the company, this person has this amount of shares in the company? What informs that decision?
Okay, so to put it in a very simple way, when you decide to set up a company, there would need to be some capital, and typically,
By capital, you mean money?
yes. Okay. Well, it may be money or it may be other forms of capital.
Okay.
But there will need to be some form of capital, and what people will typically do is, okay, and we need 10,000 CDs to set up the company, and so would say maybe the registered capital of the company is 10,000 CDs, and the company is being set up with, let's say, 10,000 shares, which means that each share, give or take, is a CD. And so if I contribute 5,000 CDs, then I have the proportion of shares, equivalent to what my contribution is. So simply put, that is how that sort of looks like. That's how a shareholding structure would typically look like. Okay. But I also need to add that I can be a shareholder of a company and not have contributed 1 CD to the company, because my liability arises when the company calls for me to, actually pay for the shares. And so there are people who may be shareholders of companies but haven't really paid anything. Until a call is made, there are effectively no issues. But when the company calls on you to fulfill that liability or to pay up, then you pay up, and then, the business continues. But that's what that looks like.
Okay. So in the instance where somebody can be a shareholder and not contribute money, what are some of the things we can look at to give this person the shares? Okay, so we are bequeathing shares of this amount to this person. Why?
It's just a shareholders agreement. So it's like a contract. So if I decide to start a company with you and we have a contract, when we have a shareholders agreement that says we both have 50% shares, the terms of the contract will dictate when I pay for my shares or how I pay for my shares. But my non-payment of the shares at that time shouldn't necessarily exclude me from being a shareholder, because the company hasn't called on me to pay up. And so it really comes down to contracts, whatever the constitution of the company says, whatever existing shareholders agreement exists among the shareholders.
Okay. Still on the LLC, setting up a board of directors. You mentioned that there's room for, what's it called? One, why do we need directors, and how do you set up a board? And you said there's sometimes room for people who are not shareholders of the company to be directors of the business, right? How does that work out? Okay,
so directors are appointed by shareholders, and if you look at the Companies Act, there's a criteria. So you must be of sound mind. There are some bankruptcy. You shouldn't have been declared bankrupt within a certain period of time. You must be of a certain age. So there's a criteria within the Companies Act. Once you meet that criteria, you're eligible to be appointed a director. So you don't necessarily need to be a shareholder in a company. To be a shareholder in a company to be a director. The shareholders can appoint you as director, and if you accept that appointment and you're eligible, then you are good to go.
Okay. So why do founders just set up, have directors who are outside outside the shareholding structure, who are not exactly shareholders of a business? Do you think there's an upside to that?
I would say because of corporate governance considerations, and because of how you may want your business to be run, or because of the kind of legitimacy you may want a business to have, or the kind of reputation you may want a business to have, you may decide to appoint people who are experts in a particular field to be on your board, or people who have a good reputation to be on the board of a company. And so there are many different considerations for how people set up their boards. Okay. Also in the regulated sector, like if you look at companies that are regulated, like the insurance sector, petroleum, and finance and banking, there are very strict guidelines on who can be director of a company. And so companies playing in this sector would be looking for a specific kind of person with a specific kind of expertise to be a director of that company. And that person doesn't necessarily need to be a shareholder of the company to occupy that position.
Okay. So so assuming we started a business, me and Kojo started a business, and we needed 10,000 CDs. We came up with 5,000 CDs each. We are essentially both 50% owners of the business, shareholding wise. Now we go on along the line a year or two later, and then we raise money, right? We are aware of fundraisings that change the shareholding structure of the business. So if you started with, say, 10,000 shares, how does that play out in the event of a fundraising, which has to an equity fundraising that has to change the share structure? Like, how do we think about that?
Okay, so that means that you would have to increase your stated capital.
Okay.
So there's a procedure where you go to the ORC, which is the Office of the Registrar of Companies, to increase your stated capital to allow you to take on more capital and potentially have more shareholders.
Okay.
So in a situation like you've mentioned, that's an option that's available to the company. Either that, or there may be a buyout option as well. So if somebody's investing capital into the company, the person may be buying out one of the shareholders. There are different structures that you can use to achieve this.
Oh, okay. So which kind of so I know, like, you run a consultancy firm that takes like a 360 view to help business owners, right? With the fundraising part, especially, if you can speak on that, what type of instruments are available for people to raise money, and which of them directly affects the shareholding in the business?
So I'd say typically the financing options available to businesses are, debt finance and equity finance. So we've already discussed equity finance, where you're increasing your stated capital to allow you to have more shareholders, and to give part of your business to other people in exchange for capital. Debt financing is when their business is taking on debts in order to finance its operations. And that debt may be in the form of debentures, which is a charge on the assets of the company, or in the form of a convertible debt. So it starts out as a debt, and then it can convert into, equity in the future.
Yeah, so assuming someone wants to start a podcast, like what we have here, right? And say the way Dick hit me up and say, "Oh, Bill, I wanted to start this business, this company, let's start a podcast." What are the actionable steps we have to take when we decide to go ahead and start the business?
Okay, I would say so.
Legally.
The first thing you need to do is figure out what you want your corporate structure to be. So are you trying to set up a partnership, or are you trying to incorporate a company? After you figure out what your corporate structure is going to be, and I assume you'll be setting up a limited liability company, you now figure out what you name the company. And so if, for example, you decide to name it Peswa Limited, you need to go to the ORC and search to see if the name is available. Because if the name is not, you may not be able to use it. Also, your name must be something that is not offensive. So there are certain words that you may not be allowed to register as a business name. After you do the search and it's established that the name is available, you need to figure out who you would like the directors of the company to be. It may be yourself and Dick, or other persons. And even though there's a minimum of 2, you can have 5, 6, however many works for you. And then figure out your shareholding structure. To do that, you may decide to have a shareholders agreement to document how you want to do business together, how you want your shares to be split, what each person's capital contribution should be. After you have all that information sorted out, you see a lawyer to assist you to register the business. Okay. I would also want to put a word of caution. I see that nowadays there are a lot of people who are not legal professionals who are incorporating businesses for people. And so you have people who have companies and they don't even know what the shareholding structure is, or they don't understand exactly. They don't understand what the shareholding structure is. Also, there are certain people that are very key in good corporate governance. One of them is a company secretary. And so you need to be, in selecting a company secretary, the person either needs to be a lawyer or somebody who is trained, who is able to perform the duties of a company secretary. You also need an auditor as part of your company registration. And so all these things are considerations that you need to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. It's always good to do things the right way, right from the jump, to make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's, so that in the future, when people are ready to invest in your business, or when your business is about to blow, you don't start running around trying to get things in place. If you have a unique name, you may also decide to trademark your name, just to make sure that nobody is taking unfair advantage of your goodwill or of your business name. Yeah, so I'll say these are some of the things you can look out for. Of course, if you have a limited liability company, there are lots of requirements that come with it. You need to file your annual returns periodically. You know, you need to have meetings. The directors would need to meet, or shareholders would need to meet, or you need to dispense with these meetings if it becomes necessary. But generally, just to adopt good corporate governance practice, I'll say that right from the onset, just make sure you're doing things the right way, you're going through the right channels, and you're avoiding any, future pitfalls or, yeah.
Okay. Hello guys. So you know how we are the Peswa are particularly excited about entrepreneurship and getting people to start the entrepreneurship journeys, right? So we've partnered with Tendo, the number one reselling platform in Africa. All you have to do to become an entrepreneur without investing any capital at all, visit tendo.app, pick up an item, add your profit, resell. Tendo is going to handle the distribution of the particular product for you, and you just sit back and then earn. Thank you very much. Visit tendo.app today. Okay, so talking about foreign business that you're trying to move into Ghana, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the things you have to consider? Moving, say you have I'm running a textile business in Japan and I want to move to Ghana. What are the things I have to look out for legally to be able to be a viable business in this space?
Okay, so I'd say that Ghana welcomes foreigners. Foreigners are able to set up and operate their businesses in Ghana. But of course, this is subject to certain limitations that exist in the Ghana Investment Promotion Center Act, or the GIPC Act, which has capital requirements for foreign companies looking to do business in Ghana. So depending on the kind of business you want to do and the kind of shareholding structure you want to adopt, you may either have to meet a $1 million capital requirement, a $500,000 capital requirement, or a $200,000 capital requirement.
Okay. And then after that, you see the rest of the things kicking. So if I'm doing an LLC, I have to get a director who.
So you set up first.
Okay.
After you set up, then you now register with the GIPC. And I'd say apart from meeting these capital requirements, the GIPC also offers several benefits for foreign companies as well, which sort of seeks to incentivize them to register with the center.
Okay. It's interesting. All right. So with your consultancy, how do business owners, which people can reach out to you, and how do we reach out to you?
Okay, so I would say that for us, we cater to all types of businesses across all kinds of industries, big or small, local businesses or foreign businesses. Our doors are open. We have the expertise, to handle businesses of all kinds across all sectors. Personally, I have a keen interest in SMEs and also businesses that are doing work that are impact-based.
Okay.
And so that's something that I'm personally passionate about. And so I look out, apart from, getting opportunity to work with business from other sectors, I look out for businesses in those sectors to work with typically at a reasonable rate because of the impact implications that exist. Mm-hmm. So you can contact us on our website.
What's the website?
Asono.org. So ASONO.org.
Oh, like Asono, like elephants.
Yes.
Oh, okay. It's interesting.
Yeah, there's a story behind that, but we'll get to that later. Or via social media channels. We're on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Threads.
Oh, okay.
Where else? Everywhere.
All right. So, essentially, you can, when people reach out, can help them on all fronts, whether it's legal or it's fundraising and consultancy.
Yeah.
Fundraising and business development, you said.
Yeah.
And then there's tax and accounting.
Yeah. So we have a group of experts that we work with, consultants across all these sectors. Okay. I'd say that we have the best in the game when it comes to branding and marketing, tax and accounting, funding and business development, software and IT, and of course, legal and compliance. And so our doors are open. We are keen to work with all kinds of businesses across all sectors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Firstly, thank you so much for the time. Thank you for being passionate about businesses and entrepreneurs. Clearly, you sound like someone who's excited about entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship in general. And thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. So it's been an insightful episode. Lots of lessons, and hopefully we bring you more of these toolkit episodes. So Idua.